Welcome to the Unfiltered Butterfly, the method behind real transformation. I'm Mike Connor. I'm the creator of Attracting Grace and also the Magical Mind Process. This show that we are about to share with you today is about what actually changes in a life. Not surface understanding, not motivation, but the patterns underneath the identity. Because when those shift, everything shifts. I'd like to introduce our first contestant, as they say on Jeopardy, Nicole Grace. Nicole, how are you? Good day.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I was diagnosed with profound hearing loss as an infant, about 3% to be exact. For most of my life, I didn't just struggle to hear, I struggled to feel understood. And I want to introduce my mom.
And hello, I am Charlotte, and of course, as she said, Nicole's mom. And I lived most of my life afraid to choose, afraid to speak, afraid to get anything wrong. That fear shaped how I showed up as a mother. This work helped me find my voice, and it helped us find each other again.
And so you may be wondering what we're doing this show on. Well, each episode that you will hear in the real moments that change them, and we'll break down the method so that you too can apply it to your life or perhaps to somebody else's who's close to you in their life. Let's start where most transformation begins. What is the pattern that you didn't even know you were living in? We're talking about aspects of identity when two people like Nicole and Charla are struggling to figure out who they really are in context of themselves and their life and who they are as mother and daughter. So before we get further into this, Nicole, tell me a little bit about your background and how it is that you and your mom were able to drift apart at some point in time and then to drift back together. What was involved in that process?
Well, Mike, I can say that it was challenging for me as a child to really understand my environment. And that a lot of it came from the transition when I did not have hearing aids at the beginning. At 18 months, I was diagnosed as profoundly deaf by a doctor. And the diagnosis that I would be in diapers for the rest of my life and basically an invalid, just throw me in a room and just call it a day. So my mom made a decision to give me hearing aids, but fair enough, but in the society, it's an opportunity or a gift to be able to give the gift of hearing. But what not understood at the time was the psychological implications that would have on a child when you give them hearing aids and all of a sudden they go from no noise to all the noise in the world. And I had a very hard time dealing with that. In fact, my mom told me that at one point I would take out my hearing aids with the wire to my ears, and she made a cute little vest with some pockets to fit the big old batteries in, because we lived in the 80s, so they didn't have the behind the ear and the fancy one that they have now. And it was so uncomfortable for me to wear it, obviously, because it made me look different from everyone else, but also I had such a hard time with the sound. She told me that I pulled them out and I would bury them in the sandbox. So I just didn't know.
I guess she didn't like them.
Correct. And I feel like there was a struggle on my part to get people to understand me. So I tried very hard to communicate my feelings, to communicate what I needed. But unfortunately, there was a tinge of frustration. There was all kinds of emotions behind it because I had no idea how to work with any of it. And so that was mirrored in my environment where my mom and my father were just as equally frustrated trying to help me, trying to find solutions. So I didn't know and they didn't know.
All right, great. So Charlotte, at this point in time, what was the first 18 months, 2 years of Nicole's life? What was that like for you?
When Nicole was first born, and I was so excited that she was a girl because that was my dream, was to have a daughter. And she was a happy child. She was always smiling, always laughing, very joyful. So I did not recognize or even pick up for a moment in the first 18 months that there was any possibility that she was not hearing what was going on. Her responses seemed to be normal. And it was my father, of course, her granddaddy, that detected and noticed that and questioned to me, could she hear? And that's when we decided to take her to the doctor.
How does the question, do you think your daughter can hear, how does that show up and what does that do to your nervous system?
When I heard that, it was a shock, because then I can remember my first reaction was, oh no, she's fine. She can hear. What are you talking about? She's just ignoring us. I put it like a child would do just to turn away.
Not a teenager yet. So
no, but they're in their own little world. And that's how I envisioned it. She was, but I didn't realize what world she was in. That was really what I missed at that point in her life.
And so when you came to terms with it, is probably the best way I could say it. How did you come to terms with the fact that she's 18 months or so and she has to go to the doctor to get an assessment of whether or not she can hear? What was it that you thought she was hearing or not hearing for all this time?
At that time, I really honestly did not know. I had no clue what she was able to decipher, what she was not able to decipher, and how she was able to respond the way she responded, such that it was basically undetectable. So when we took her to the doctor and she was diagnosed, and as Nicole said, he was not very, the word being the future, she just didn't seem like she had much future, had no promises ahead of her because of her inability to hear. And when I heard that, it was like, no, I'm not going to go along with that. But then the flip side of the coin that made it worse was when that I got home and her father completely rejected her. Told me that was not his daughter. He didn't know how I got around and got somewhere and got pregnant and had somebody else's child. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. So having to deal with what the doctor had said, now her father that was totally rejecting this child as his daughter, that put me in a situation that just threw my nervous system totally through the roof, out of the universe, so to speak, because the only thing I knew to do at that time was to break the ties with the family and with him. Otherwise, she would not have any future.
Interesting. So if you are piqued by this story, hang tight. There's a lot more coming on this episode and other episodes of the Unfiltered Butterfly podcast. A lot moving forward, a lot of moving pieces, and they started very, very young in their life. Nicole, as I recall, you are in your mid-40s, and you were going back to the 18 months, 2-year period. When your mom was going through this, of course, you had no real understanding of it because A, you wouldn't understand it because you didn't think about it. You wouldn't know what it meant. And the fact is you couldn't hear it anyway, right? So how did you deal with these aspects?
To be honest, I feel like the pattern that formed early on was the need to belong. And it was the need to belong that drove my need to perform, to hide the handicap, so to speak. So my stepfather made it a really big deal that I was going to be normal. And he used those words, Nicole, you are going to be normal. You are a normal child. And I understood where he was coming from, but in looking back, that's something that you say to a child that sends the implication that they're not normal. And
sure. Yeah.
Right. So that's where the pattern started early on. And I was I want to say a hell of a performer. I just went above and beyond, and I did all the things I needed to do. I got straight A's in school. As a matter of fact, when I was 4 is when I learned how to speak. So I was pretty much mute, so to speak, until I was 4. Went to speech therapy, and the speech therapist is what trained me on how to speak. So I was very diligent in making sure that I understood every word. And it was quite a frustrating process because I do have some sort of an accent, but that's only because I only hear what I hear. So the sound that I heard is how I spoke. And I remember during that session how she kept reiterating, no, that's wrong. And in my mind, I'm like, but that's what I'm hearing. It's got to be right. So I think at that point, it just really added to the need to perform, because the more that I could perform, the better that I could be. It meant that I was going to be normal. It meant that I could have a happy life. And Unfortunately, over time, that pattern did a very big disservice for me because it was never enough. It was never good enough, no matter how much I did or how further I went. I never got what I was looking for. And so what happened over time is that I neglected my true self in favor of hiding the disability. So I was essentially an ableist, is what I've learned inside of me. So I was a world biggest ableist inside, where I did not allow myself sign language. My father said I wasn't allowed to learn it. I was not allowed to closed captioning. I was not allowed to do pretty much anything that would be normal accessibility for someone with my condition. So I was just pushed just to overcome all of that, and I did very well. I did very well for a long time. But unfortunately, mentally, it really did myself a great disservice.
Fantastic. Thank you that's got to be hard to say. And Nicole, you were sort of 0 for 2 on the dad front. And Charla, you were 0 for 2 on the husband front, from what we're hearing. But tell us, Nicole, or tell us, Charla, what it's like to go through those aspects where you were shutting down in a lot of other ways as well.
I don't think I even realized I was shutting down. That's the sad part about the entire thing, because my life at a certain point turned into a facade. I was a performer. I worked, and I was, of course, a working mom, and Nicole spent a lot of her early years of life with other people, with her grandmother, with an aunt, with a sitter. So that put her in a situation where she did not have the time that she needed with her mother. And this is what I have learned through the years and becoming closer to Nicole, was that I did not recognize those times that all she needed was mother. And now looking back on it, not that I didn't show love or anything, that's not what I'm saying, but it was the times that she wanted to really get close to me, and I wasn't there because I wasn't at home.
And what was it that allowed you, in retrospect, to look back and see that this aspect of daughter-mother had not yet bonded or connected at a strong enough level? When did that happen?
Well, we bonded, like you said, to a certain degree. And then when she left home and she went to college, to the University of Florida, she was on her own, and she can tell her own story about that. But the fact that when she left, and I felt in my heart, I didn't feel like she was really prepared. After everything that she had been through, I pretty much let her go out into the world, but out into the world in a lot of gray areas. So I carried that in my heart for a long, long time because I wanted to be so close to her. And then when she married and she had children of her own, and then I was able to go visit, be with her, be with the grandchildren, that's when our growth began to develop. Because I had the time then that I could be with her and not have to be concerned about what I had to do outside.
Got it. So Nicole, tell us what your process was when you got through high school, when you got through college. What was going on in you? What were the absolute aspects, good, bad, or indifferent, that you were dealing with, probably quite quietly, as your mom would have indicated from earlier times in your life? What were you going through, Nicole, to accomplish what you did accomplish?
Well, early on, I got the sense that I had to figure my own way out because nobody had any answers for me. Looking back, of course they wouldn't, because they weren't living my experience. But I didn't know it at the time because, again, I'm trying to be normal. So I'm looking at everyone else as if they're the ones that have all the answers, and I need to measure up to them. And so when they weren't able to give me answers, it was quite frustrating, because then I put it in my mind, I'm going to figure it out. So that I became the world's greatest victor. So every problem I encountered, I had the solution.
You had the solution. So you were a fixer.
It became almost like an addiction, because I could fix anything. I could fix problems. I could fix physical things. I even fixed some stuff in my car. When the car broke down, I figured it out and changed it. Boom, I got it done. So it was one of those propulsions of me, that drive to be normal. That was really what was driving all of it.
The drive to be normal, because at some level you were told or you felt like you weren't normal.
Correct. And not enough. I was not good enough. And all of it was because I never accepted my condition. I never accepted the fact that I, quote unquote, couldn't hear, even though I had hearing aids.
How does one accept that condition, Nicole? How do you get to a point where you're okay with the probability and possibility that you would never, ever hear without some kind of device that would help you do that?
I don't think I ever came to terms with it until about 5 years ago when I met you, Mike, when I started the whole transformation that I was going through and changing my beliefs and looking at the patterns and all of that. And one of the biggest things that I noticed that I was looking for was love. Since I was a child, since as young as I can remember, I had this longing for love. I just wanted to find it. And for some reason, I thought it was romance. So I was going to romance novels looking for love. And that's where I got my idea for future husbands and relationships, this whole fantasy land. But there was an underlying piece there. And what I didn't know at the time was the love that I was looking for was the love I wasn't giving myself. And I was looking outside of me the whole time trying to find it. And unfortunately, with the dysfunctional family environment I was in, the love wasn't there. And then I would go to school, and certainly the love wasn't there, so I was never finding it. And I had this warped imagination that if I was normal, I would get the love. So it was all twisted. And going back to what my mom said about me going to college, I remember that day very, very well, because I was running. At that point, I was going full speed ahead to do whatever I could do. Let me get a degree, because if you get a degree, then you can get a nice job, and then you can retire, and so on. I fell into that mindset. But I remember when I had my first internship, I was selected out of 450 applicants to go into this very exclusive internship that was actually paid, and most internships are unpaid. So when I got the paid internship, I knew it was a big deal. But when I got it, the fact that I wasn't good enough, the pattern, followed me, and I was exhausted. And I fell into a state of depression because I couldn't figure it out anymore. It ran to a point where it was like there were things that I did not know, that I needed to know, that I didn't learn. And unfortunately, my relationship with my mom at the time, there was a lot of absentee, like what she was saying. She was always working. And because there was a lot of absence there, we never created the relationship where I could go to her and say, hey, Mom, how would I do this or how would I do that? Because early on, remember, I wasn't normal, and I couldn't get my answers. And then right away, my mom was included in that. Well, she doesn't know, so then I can't go to her. So I was alone for many years in trying to figure this out. And I went through a lot of trial and error and painful situations. Even when I met my husband, it was my ex-husband. It was one of those where I was so desperate for change that he asked me to marry him after 2 weeks, and I'm like, let's do it.
Oh my, that's going to lead to a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Before we get there, Nicole, let me ask Charla a little bit about what Nicole just said. How do you understand what Nicole was going through based on the work that we've done and how you've been able to reconcile some of those aspects?
What's really, really interesting is that because of Nicole's ability to excel, and she did that through high school, and then she had the propensity when she went right on into college, she was just like this, excelling all the way, to the point that I never anticipated or even thought there was anything, so to speak, out of the norm.
Sure.
In that respect. Because she didn't come to me. And now I understand why she didn't come to me. Because I wasn't there. And I miss those times, and I look back on those we have. Because in being able to open up and listen to her, very, very important aspect, but to be able to listen to her and what grew in her own manner strengthened me. It made me a much, much better person and allowed me to go within, because like Nicole, all my life, I was external. As long as everything around me was
Hold on a
fine.
second. What does your external mean to us? I
Okay,
don't know that you understand that.
My external would be outside of my body and my feelings. It would be totally my surroundings, those around me, not necessarily just physical environment, but everything around me in connection with relationships, because I did not know who I was. I was pretty much following the rules. Everything that I was taught, that's what I did. And if I broke a rule, then I would suffer the consequences, and I did not want the suffering or the pain, so I would stay away from it, and I would just bury all of this inside myself instead of opening up and letting it go.
Nicole, when you hear that perspective from your mom, how does that react or shift any of the patterns that you recognized growing up? Can you understand what your mom was going through? Can you understand what you were going through? And how do you reconcile all those at the same time?
Now I understand completely what she was going through, and a lot of it was fear. She was paralyzed with fear because the environment that we were in, she's got 4 children, a husband that's not really, how do I put it delicately, just not up to par. He's doing a lot of things that are just inappropriate. And what does she do as a mom? She's just in a rock and a hard place because a single mom, 4 children, one of them handicapped. I can imagine what kind of fear that would bring up, and she's holding me too bad. She decided to stay, and unfortunately, when she decided to do that, it caused a lot of friction in the family with the children because we did not get the love and the comfort from her because of that fear. It was hidden, and I don't blame her for it. It took me a while, and when I started doing this work, I had the opportunity to invite her to join me. And before I started this work, our relationship was it was strange. It was more of like an obligation relationship. Like, this is my mom, I respect my mom, and that's as far as it went. As far as going deeper than that, it took some time on my part first to recognize my own pattern. So in looking back at me, I understand why I did some of the things I did out of survival, out of just misguided beliefs, and not having a stable family environment to guide me the way that I needed. And in knowing all of that, it made it very easy for me to look at my mom and forgive her for the challenges that I had, because it was not really her fault. I mean, we both did things based on what we thought was the best in at the time. And I can tell you that I always knew that my mom loved me. I never once doubted that my mom didn't care for me. And I always loved my mom. It was just a longing of a better relationship, I think, that we both had, that we have been seeking. So when I got into this work, there was an opportunity for me to invite my mom into this work when I saw my own success, how I was able to identify these patterns and, oh my God, this is why this happened. I'm getting an understanding. And I was able to change the way that I think, change the decision that I made, and become a better person. And so I invited my mom to come with me. And when she said yes, and that's another story, I believe, for another podcast, but when she said yes and we got together, that's when both of us took it upon ourselves to be very open and honest, and a lot of compassion for what we both went through, to try to understand exactly where do we miss the boat. And that's here today.
Thank you for sharing that with us. May I ask a question, Nicole? How did you and your mom, who were coming from completely different aspects of life, with challenges in lots of different ways, how is it that you felt that you were able to find out that you actually missed the boat? What boat did you miss? How did that whole thing unfold? Wow, how is the turning point now where you have what appears to be a very strong, kind, loving relationship with your mom, even though you two didn't necessarily start out with the strongest of bonds?
Well, when I say we missed the boat, I feel like we missed the boat in awareness, because we were just so driven by fear, so driven by survival, driven by trauma, and escaping the trauma, escaping the pain. But that was so much of our life that we missed a large part of being able to communicate and just get it out because we were so scared. I had a hard time at first with this work to even share with my mom my feeling, because the last thing I wanted to do was to hurt her. Regardless if it was true or not, it can be painful to hear something when all you want is the best for your child, and I understood that. And I think I learned it most with my own children. So when I saw, in the beginning, I used to raise my children the way my mom raised me. I was also working.
How else would you know how to do it, right?
Yeah, I was in retail. I would work 60 hours a week, and at the time, my ex-husband would be home, and he was a stay-at-home dad, and he took care of what he needed to do. And I remember I had the same pattern as my mom, very rigid. You're going to get good grades in school, and if you don't, the consequences, and just absolutely no understanding or teaching of life or wisdom or any of that stuff. And all of that changed when I started this work, and I started looking at my children differently. And I think that's when it started to open the possibility of maybe I need to look at my mom and I's relationship a little bit differently, and especially how I parent my children. So I pivoted from being a parent that tells my children what to do. I pivoted from that to I trust my children to do what they know to do, and I will give them the wisdom when they fail. So I gave them the chance to make their own decision, and then I was right there to catch them should they fall or should they have questions. And it was a much better opportunity for me to show up as the mother that I never had. And of course, there's opportunities, more opportunities to grow, because I missed a lot of the beginning years of my children, but I'm very grateful I got it at the end. And
Charla, let me ask you a question if I could. From what Nicole just said, I love the banter going back and forth. I can't imagine this is easy, Charla, to go through and hear what Nicole is talking about from that perspective, and yet somehow you are okay with it. Please share.
I'm very okay with it because I am understanding. I think that's the word. I'm understanding a lot of what happened during her life that I never could apply a reason or really know why she felt certain way or did certain things. Now I'm learning that aspect of her life that I never knew. But one thing I do want to mention was one of my biggest aspects was control. I felt like I had to control everything, that if I didn't control it and it didn't go a certain way, I would not know how to handle it. That's the way my control and my fear was, because I didn't want to make a mistake and I didn't want to do anything wrong. So by doing that and maintaining that rigidity that she mentioned, that put a strain on her and, of course, on me and really the entire family, because there wasn't a day or a time, if anything should happen, I would kind of, shy back or hold within myself. I can't lose control. Now, whatever I do, I have to make sure that I maintain that control. And it was very difficult. It was a battle inside myself all the time that I never...
Yeah, but it wasn't a battle between the two of you, an outward inside you.
It was always inside of me. I never let it out. I would never expel the words or be able to explain why I felt or what I did certain things, because I always held it inside.
Let me ask another question to you, Charlotte. What moment in your life with Nicole, as a youngster, as a midlife kind of person, what moment made change unavoidable for you? At what point did you say, we've got to get this straight? And when you and Nicole together came to that decision, what was a part of that?
That was the moment. And the moment was the morning that I was sitting on the edge of my bed. And I don't remember now if I was maybe just about to get my shoes on or if I was just sitting there in contemplation. And I looked up and Nicole was standing in the doorway. And of course, all I did was look up with a big smile on my face, all happy. Hey, and I was at her home at that time visiting. And I was all excited inside me when all of a sudden it was like something I had never seen, never had experienced. Here was my child raging through the door with words coming out of her mouth and fire and fury and anger and just the most horrible things, just almost like, Mom, I got to get it out. And she was just battling because all of this was churning inside of her. When she did that, my normal reaction would have been to have jumped up grab that child, probably shake her and say, "You're not talking to your mama like that." But that day, no, I sat there and I heard only one word. Then there were angels all around me. I know there were, because all I could hear was, "Listen, listen, don't say a word, listen." And I sat there and I listened. I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes. This child was just totally someone I had never seen, never known, never experienced, never expected to react like this. And then all of a sudden, when the last word was spoken, it was like this huge weight just lifted out of her body, and I could sense it and I could feel it. Now, she can tell me how she felt, but my sensing of how she felt was that her whole body just went into a very relaxed state. So much had been released out of her body that she had never been able to do all of her entire life. And that at that moment, I stood up, walked toward her, grabbed her in my arms, and we cried and we hugged. And it was a beautiful moment.
That is the moment that you two made a decision, verbally, non-verbally, whatever, to come together to build a relationship once again.
And I did. I believe I just said to Nicole, "Thank you for finally letting me know," because I didn't know.
Nicole, that was a powerful mom shared with us, no doubt about that. How about you? What was it like for you when you were charging up the steps, or I'm just assuming they were steps, but you're charging into the room and you've had all the fun you can have, and you've got to offload all sorts of frustration, disappointment, anger, whatever those words are. What was that like for you? Do you remember that experience?
I remember it very well. It brought me tears to my eyes because it was a hard moment for me, because at that time, my mom had been visiting with us for a while. She was with us during COVID, and she came back. She left once the restrictions were lifted, the lockdown. When the lockdown opened up, she went back home, and then she came back. And when she came back, I had done a lot of growth at that time inside, so I had changed. But when she came back, it was like she remembered me as I was, not who I was now. And the anger started building because I noticed the control. So she mentioned control, and yes, she was extremely controlling. There was no freedom for me to do anything that I thought was best for myself or my children, and she always had something to say about it. And it created a lot of friction between myself, my family, and my husband. Because at one point I told my mom, "It feels like I have to choose between you or my husband." It's a very uncomfortable situation to be in. And
well, your mom was in that same situation 20, 30, 40 years earlier, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So it was a moment where something had to change if we wanted to continue our relationship. And I believe it was my fierce desire to have a relationship with my mom. And that was the day that I allowed my authenticity to show. The anger came out. It was quite an outburst. I wasn't really screaming, but my voice was pretty...
It was loud.
very strong. I think the words that I chose were just very, very strong. It was just direct and very unexpected, but it was how I felt. And it needed to come out because I had fallen into the pattern when I was doing this work of just suppressing the stronger emotion and just covering it up. And as long as I was moving forward progress, I didn't worry about the rest of the stuff that was behind. And unfortunately, it came to a boiling point with my mom. And I can tell you that I was terrified. When I was letting this stuff come out, I was absolutely terrified because I didn't know how my mom was going to respond, how she was going to react. I didn't know any of that. And at the time, I just said, "You know what? I knew I needed to get it out. I got it out, and I just prayed that everything would be good at the end." And I can tell you that when my mom just sat there and didn't say a word, and then she got up to hug me, I was in shock. I was in shock because I was like, "Who is this person?" Because you would have said something. You would have said, "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm leaving. I'm going to pack up my bag." The mom that I knew. So she showed up as a different person. And when she did that, she gave me what I had been looking for an entire lifetime. She gave me the support that I needed and let me know that my anger was okay, and let me know how important it was that we opened up a channel of communication so it didn't build like that. The anger had built over the years, and I just needed to get out in a safe container. So my mom had given me that safe container, and it was a beautiful moment. It was hard for me because of the shame of that you're faced with expressing an emotion like that. But her response was, there's nothing better I could have asked for. And she gave me all the healing in the world I needed at that moment. Thank you.
There may be a number of people who are listening to this podcast right now wondering what it's like to be stuck in an old family dynamic. What is one question that a family member, Nicole, Charla, what question could they ask themselves tonight to create some kind of a healing presence between another person in the family or another close friend?
I can answer that first. And it's going to go back to what we just discussed about Nicole. And that is to take the time to listen. So often we don't, because we have in our minds the way that things should be. We expect our family and our children to behave, perform, whatever word you want to use, in a certain manner. And we don't give them an opportunity to speak where we can listen. Or when they try to speak or they do speak, we cut them off and we don't listen. So,
their time defending ourselves, right?
Exactly. So to me, it is to basic listen and listen.
What are the one thing that a family might choose to do?
I would say to think about what is the most fearful thing in the world that you would love to say, but you can't say because you're so scared to say it. That's what needs to be said. And I would encourage people to reach out and go on and learn and say, listen, there's something that I need to say. It's uncomfortable, but I need to be able to express it. Would you be willing to listen without judgment? And what I've learned is a lot of what we go through is our own perspective. The other side had no clue. The other person that's involved had no clue. My mom thought she was the best mom in the world doing the best that she could. She had no idea the perspective that I held. And so it's very important to realize that. And when we're able to create that container and actually reach out and let them know, ask for it, ask and you shall receive, right? So you ask for that no judgment space. Would you be willing to listen? And then you just sit down and you express yourself. And then the person that's on the other side receiving it, take it. Just listen without judgment, without taking it personal, because it's not personal. It's what the other person has created. It has nothing to do with truth. It's not truth. It's their illusion of truth. And so when they express it and you bring it into awareness, that's when the realization comes in. Wow, I didn't know you felt that way. And no, that's not how things are. And then that's where the healing starts.
Well, I'll bet that if something in this conversation felt familiar to any of you, it's not a coincidence. That's what we call pattern recognition. And the good news is patterns can change. And we'll show you how to do it on the Unfiltered Butterfly podcast. Nicole, final words for our listening audience.
Thank you for listening and thank you for showing up.
And Charla?
Yes, thank you for being here. And of course, return. That's what's important. There's more to come.
Indeed. And we will see you all next time. Thank you for being here. Talk to you soon.